So welcome back to the channel. This is the second part in our series heading up to Scotland. In the last video we left the Angel of the North and we headed up for another half an hour or so right into the centre of Newcastle. We're going there to take a bridge shot, which hopefully I'll show on screen now. So the journey over from the Angel of the North right into the centre of Newcastle didn't take long at all. It's only about 20 or 30 minutes. I did find some free parking just off Lombard Street on a place called Queen Street, which is very close to the quayside. So welcome to the Gateshead Millennium Bridge. We're currently sat on it, and we're just waiting for the sun to drop a little bit so we can try and get some night shots. Had a little bit of a wander around. It's a nice local area, a few places to get food. Apparently ice cream for pizza is good. I've got no affiliation to them, so we'll give it about an hour or so and wait for a bit of a sunset hopefully, and then get a shot of the bridge. So in terms of equipment, the 15-35 ended up being the star of the show. Externally zooming lens, slightly unusual in that at the 15mm end it is extended and at the 35mm end it contracts. Brilliant lens, great for wide field and landscape. Two switches, AF and MF, autofocus and manual focus. Autofocus for us, stabilizer on and off. Always on unless you're on a tripod. Great lens, superb for a shot like this. Okay, for our bridge shot we were shooting handheld, but we still went for mechanical shutter. Subject to detect was set to none. And we were on mechanical shutter because we dropped down below that magic number of 0.5 seconds. That's as far as you can go with electronic shutter. And we were right down at 2 seconds. To compensate for that long shutter speed, our aperture was right up at f22. And our ISO was low, it was down at 50. So with those settings, you could take a semi-long exposure shot, handheld. Now by handheld, it wasn't completely free. I was resting on a wall, but the image stabilization still helps with any shake that you get there. Our focal length was 22mm, so we're at the wide end of the 15-35 lens, and that's all we used in terms of settings. So here you can see a few pictures of the quayside. The Millennium Bridge was there on the left. Sadly it wasn't lit up, so didn't end up being the focal point of the shot. There were buskers, there were people getting married, and lots of bridges. It was quite a cool place to wander about. And this shot was taken from the Millennium Bridge looking towards all the other bridges, which is quite a nice outlook. That was nearly the picture. And just another shot of one of the many bridges in Newcastle. Well worth a visit. It was a nice place to see. Okay, so this is our picture from Newcastle. We were looking up the river. So the Millennium Bridge is actually to the left, just out of shot, and this was the preferred scene that I took. You'll notice the water has got sort of a blurry effect to it. That's because it was a sort of semi-long exposure handheld shot. I love this building. I think it looks great, and all these bridges stacked together. You've got so you've got the Tyne Bridge, the Swing Bridge, the High Level Bridge, the Queen Elizabeth Bridge, the King Edward Bridge. So there are a lot of bridges, and I wanted that stack of bridges there. I quite like the colours on this post in the foreground, so I think I'd like to keep that in. It's a bit dark, we'll brighten that up. And apart from the dead sky, I'm fairly happy with the framing of that. So we'll just crop that in a little bit, and then we'll start working on an edit. So I'll duplicate the layer, and I'm going to kick off by just pulling up the shadows a little bit. So image adjustment, shadows and highlights. And we'll just have a look how far we should push the shadows. So this is an image where I want to push the shadows in places and not others. So what I'll do is I'll increase the shadows in this image so I'm exposing for this front post, and I'll ignore the rest of the image. And then I'll duplicate the background layer again and put that in front. So we've got the original image again on top, and then in between we've sandwiched in that really bright one. I'll then put a mask on the top layer, and I'm just going to paint with a black brush. Okay, and then I'm going to select the post, because that's the only thing I'm really looking to increase the colours on. Okay, so that's the only bit that I'm looking to change the brightness of. At that point, I can go to my brush and select the mask, and I'm going to paint with black. And what that does is it removes from this image the bits that are being shown. So beneath the image, we've got the layer that's bright, so we're going to hide bits of the top layer, and that will bring the colours through. So the bottom layer is the layer that I've pulled through this brightness, and I think it's a bit too bright. So I'm just going to drop the fill down. That's good. And then I'm going to increase the vibrance and saturation. So vibrance, that's plus 45, saturation plus 13. Cool, and that's had the effect that I wanted. I'm going to grab all of those layers now and merge them together. And that's us at base of the image. Now, I think we can pull out the greens in this building. So I'm going to go image adjustments, vibrance and saturation. And I'm going to push the vibrance up. And that's plus 48, and the saturation plus 33. Cool, so before and after. Pulled out more blues than greens. We'll duplicate that layer again. This lamppost is a bit distracting, and I think I could chop it at the top of the bridge without it looking too out of place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to clone stamp, and I'll use a 200-ish pixel brush. So I'm going to grab a bit of sky next to the post, and then I'm just going to start feathering out that post all the way down. So we will move to a smaller brush with a hard edge, and then just continue that deletion. Because everything's white here, we can get away with using a hard edge. We don't need to feather it in. So I don't need this box. I'm just going to delete that. What I'll do is I'll quickly select that rectangle, so I end up with a straight edge. I'll move that a little bit. There we go. And then start clearing out, and then just remove these bits. Gives me a cleaner edge by doing it that way. Okay, and then we've got to do the same thing across the top here. Okay, so for this one, it's on a slight angle. So we use the polygon lasso tool and click the start point and the end point in line with the rails. And then we have our area. Double click to finish, and then we'll just clone stamp again and remove that. So although we have a bit of a post here that sort of goes up and stops, it's not actually noticeable in the image. The lamppost we will deal with, so we'll grab the left side of it, Control C, Control V to copy and paste it. And now we have a new layer that's appeared, and all that's got in is one side of the lamppost. Okay, so we need to flip this the other way around. So we'll go to Edit and Transform and flip horizontal, and that makes it face the other way. And then we just use the Move tool to pop that down where we think it should sit. And that actually lines up pretty nicely like that. So we'll then merge those two layers together, and we have a lamppost. Okay, so that's all starting to look quite normal now. I might darken down the black bits of the post but keep the colours bright. So I'll just use the burn tool for this. Brush size, 65, shadows, exposure I'll keep quite light, 26%. And I'm going to zoom in for this one. Oh, I need a bigger brush than that, so we'll go about 200-300 pixels. There we go. And we'll just pull in some of the greys a bit. It was a black post. So it's a consequence of us brightening the colours in it. That looks better. So I'll duplicate the layer. So I'm just going to go Image, Adjustments, and then down to Selective Colour. And I'm just going to run through each of the sliders on each of the colours and see if I can make any improvements. Okay, so before and after, just pulled out a few colours where we like them. One thing we can play with, because we've got quite a smooth water, is putting an artificial reflection on. So if we grab the bridges, okay, so I'm gonna set the layer's visibility to 50% by dropping the fill value, and that will let me see the layer below as well as the layer on top. And then I can line the bridges up so the bottom of the bridge that was really there hits the reflection of the bridge. Okay, and and then we'll set the fill back up to 100%. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is use the eraser tool to rub out bits of the image. I'll put the opacity to 100%. With quite a large brush, we'll start off about 500 pixels, and let's just take out the bigger bits that we obviously don't want. Okay, so you start to see the effect we're going to try and go for here. I'll use a smaller brush, and I'll drop that opacity down to 24% on that. We'll just start cleaning this up a little bit. Okay, now we're going to darken that layer down. So Control M for curves. Just pull the bottom of that curve down. Okay, and then image adjustment, shadows and highlights, and we're going to pull the highlights down as well to take out the white bits. Okay, and another curves. So you can run curves as many times as you like. So I'm just going to use Control T, free transform, and then I'm just going to skew it a little bit and stretch it a bit because reflections are not perfect. Then we'll use the smudge tool, quite a big brush. I'm just going to smudge it a little bit. So these are only on very low values. It's at 5% the smudge tool is at the moment, and it's just softening the edges of that reflection. Okay, and then I'm just going to tidy up a little bit more around the water. Okay, so with the new layer, we're just going to go to the dodge tool, and we'll do a low exposure of about 10%, 15 in this case, and on highlights, we'll just brighten this up a little bit because this building looks quite good on the image. Midtones and shadows. Okay, so before and after, just showing off a bit of that. It looks like reflections of buildings, but it's actually just the glass paneling there. It's quite a nice effect. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is just run a gradient on the sky. So if you hold down over the paintbrush tool, you can use the gradient tool. And this one is a fade from neutral density fade, the bottom right one here. And that will just pull a shade down the image. I quite like that in this image. It's quite bold and strong, and it sort of fits well. So I'll keep that. All right, so we'll merge those layers. And the last thing I'm going to do is give it a really big punch. So vibrance and saturation. And I'm going to try and pull out the greens in this building now. So saturation, right up. That's plus 45%. So before, after. That's really finished it off nicely for me. I do like these big, punchy, vibrant images. It just looks cool. And that is my Newcastle Bridge image. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Next we head on from Newcastle up into Scotland, and if you join us in the next video, you'll get to see more of the same.